Certainly took quite a while for the first save of the game, though at least it looks like the next match are going to be a little quicker than that. We'll see how long that particular trend for saving lasts. Part of me wants to ask why the space pirates have devices that can be activated by the morph ball bombs. The other just appreciates the fact that bombs are being used for puzzles outside of just break this block. Anyway, looks like we've got some recently killed pirates here. Certainly feels like quite the sign that the boss fight is near. Pleasant, sucking their blood along with everything else. Still not enough to make me call these things parasites, though. Yeah, cutscene just as a boss fight starts. It's probably not gonna be an outright nerve-wracking experience as the boss fights in Dread, but that doesn't mean this game isn't gonna have some fun encounters. Why, hello there, Your Majesty. I don't suppose we can bond over the fact that we both enjoy killing pirates, can we? Yeah, it's indeed the second queen, and it looks like this one is doing a good job of using the ship's shielding for the reactor to defend itself. I can certainly appreciate that, since the damn thing would probably just rip us to shreds if it actually tried to take this into a melee fight. Weapon-grade blasts of energy. That's certainly an interesting change from the acid these things are supposed to spit around, and I have the distinct feeling that we're not going to be able to just wait for it to run out of energy as it spits lasers at us. I can't even begin to say how much I appreciate finally coming up against a boss in this series that we have an actual health bar for. It's just amazing how much I appreciate being able to track how much damage we're doing to a foe and how close we are to killing it. Sure, this first boss is quite the easy pitch, but it's certainly showing how the game treats their bosses, that's for sure. Health bar, gimmick, start blasting while avoiding as much damage as you can. Well, that certainly didn't take long to kill, but again, this was the first boss of the Metroid Prime series. They're not gonna throw anything especially vicious at us this early on. They're still trying to figure out how to pull off 3D. Okay, probably a bad idea for it to die in a reactor room. Right, of course its corpse would disrupt the core. And I probably shouldn't have pulled out the scanner for this escape, even if 7 minutes seems a little generous to me. Well, the elevator needed scanning, though somehow I thought we might see some data on some computers on the way here. Kind of amazed that there are still pirates left on the ship. And I was not expecting that creature to die after killing those two pirates rather dramatically. Wait, the energy pickups get lore entries? Please tell me the logbook has something more meaty than what we read as we scan it. And I should not feel so concerned with scanning more things when the place is gonna blow up around us. least it's understandable why the pirates aren't trying to escape. All the escape pods were long gone before we ever arrived. Okay, that certainly looks like a terrifying swarm of the little bastards. Good thing we don't have to worry about reloading when it comes to shooting off our power beam, or ammo in general. And while the bastards die on contact with our armor, that was an intimidating number they started with. And we're pretty fragile at this stage of the game. Not a single energy tank in us. Right. Of course there's even more of them. Granted, I don't absolutely have to kill every one of them to be able to move forward. Still, I just have this instinct to clear areas before trying to move on, and to be fair, it's not like there's an infinite number of these damn things, so I can't help thinking it would have been interesting if we had to deal with a swarm or two while fighting the Queen. Definitely like the effect that the little bastards obscure our vision, even if that shouldn't happen, as a suicide against our feet. Really sells the idea that this is messy work we're doing. I also like the minor effect that our cannon smokes a bit after we've done some rapid-fire shots. Just because it's not possible to overheat this thing doesn't mean it doesn't get hot at all. Definitely a good number of nice visual touches they threw into this game. Great! Of course the turrets are still functional even as everything blows up around us and the reactor is going through some kind of meltdown. And yet another swarm between us and the way out of here. It would help to know just how much time we can afford to waste on our way out. Okay, that was intimidating to see. What is that thing even here for, other than to scare the crap out of the player anyway? None of the other hallways had a crusher. Okay, so we've got some early game grapple points. Oh, son of a bitch! Sorry to tell you this, Ridley, but you had a much better war in the Game Boy Advanced games. Well, at least we don't have to worry about fighting him while we have a timer. He's one of those foes that kinda needs to be a brutal fight, and there's no way we can pull off brutal with this little time on the clock. Oh, now what? Huh. Didn't really look like a blast that could send her flying, but that might just be graphical limitations. Wait, what? That's our reasoning for losing upgrades in this game? We slammed against a wall too hard? Granted, it's not like we got great explanations in any game other than Fusion, but come on. Hyper-advanced alien power armor here. And to make matters worse, the impact did so much damage to our systems, but somehow didn't actually bring our shields down in the slightest. Just because I understand why we had those minimal powers removed, so we'd have to grab them again later, doesn't mean I'm a fan of the explanation. Well, at least we don't have to run all the way to our ship just outside of the station, and despite the bullshit damage we took, Samus can still breathe in a vacuum. Right, after that space dragon. If he's stationed on this planet, then it's probably very important to the space pirates, and inconveniencing these guys is a galactic service. Okay, so we're definitely gonna have to grab quite a few upgrades before fighting Ridley, since he can apparently go through re-entry unprotected somehow. Samus, I know the ship is probably extremely well protected against lightning, but it's still a bit ridiculous that you chose a place that's going through a thunderstorm as your landing zone. Last time I checked, clouds obscured things for orbital surveillance. So why decide to literally fly down blind when you're picking your landing zone? I know it's not all that big of an issue, but still, it's one of those things that I find a little difficult to ignore. Yeah, this seems like a good spot to save. Okay, so apparently can't help being annoyed that Samus's ship apparently doesn't have any deployable landing gear. It's just gonna be constantly floating there for the entire game, just spending fuel, hovering in place. I never questioned the ship staying in place in the other Metroid games we've gone through so far, so... that's one of the detriments of the 3D, shift. Well, it certainly didn't take us long to find some hyper-aggressive wildlife once we touched the ground. Not a surprise by any means, but I can't help thinking that the game should have thought of something else to call these things other than beetle. Not that I know what they should have called it instead, considering I rarely, if ever, bothered to check the names of the creatures we ran into in the 2D games. And most of the bosses, I didn't bother looking up the names for either. It's just a random thought that popped into my head right there. Explosive plants! Certainly an interesting evolution on this planet, but again, every planet Samus goes to has wildlife that is absurdly determined to kill our heroine. And this thing doesn't feel like it has a fitting name either. At least calling the burrowing melee bugs beetles makes sense, even if that's not all that creative. Zoomer makes me imagine something that moves incredibly fast, but the gimmick for these things is not that they move fast, it's that they crawl around and poke anything that touches them with the absurd amount of spikes on their body. And excuse me for saying this, but the spiky crawlers felt like they fit in better in the 2D environment rather than 3D. 2D, they can be a genuine obstacle on platforms we try to jump onto. 3D, they're just slightly mobile supply stations. after killing a basic one less than a minute ago, we're already seeing the evolution of that kind of creature? Huh. And this one just completely shrugs off the power beam. Guess we need missiles to crack that shell. It really didn't take long for us to run into a pallet swap. If anything, I have the distinct feeling that the basic spiky bugger was thrown in just as a nod to the 2D games. That breed, and many things just like it, were pretty plentiful in the 2D Metroids after all. Yet another plant that will explode on us. Well, at least that kind of plant isn't potentially deadly to be around. That said, I'm kind of surprised that Samus doesn't just scan everything, including the grass as well, just to be sure. These kinds of environments aren't generally kind to visitors after all. Probably one of the reasons why the pirates love setting up in planets like this. The more deadly the world, the more of a pain in the ass it is for an invading army to set themselves up well enough to push the defenders out. Shame that it's also a pain in the ass to entrench yourself on a death world, since, well, everything is always trying to kill you. And, of course, the Chozo ruins probably made this planet seem attractive as well. I swear, there are so many Chozo ruins spread out across the galaxy that I'm amazed this series doesn't have any races that outright worship the birds. You know, it would be a nice change of pace if we ended up on a planet that had nothing related to the Chozo at all. Granted, there'd probably be some other ruins of an ancient, advanced civilization for us to gather upgrades from, but still, the Chozo have been used more often than Ridley, and he's quite the series regular, to the point that even if I managed to kill him for a final time, I probably would not be convinced that it really was the final time. Well, that's quite a number of bugs we've run into here. Too bad for them, it takes more than sheer numbers for creatures that slow to even harm us. Or at least more than the sheer numbers that this game can probably process for enemies of that size. Of course it can't. But why am I not allowed to scan what that item is from here? It's most certainly visible. I'd ask how they were forced to become a bridge, but I assume that the Chozo probably had something to do with that. They've always been treated as essentially space elves. Space elves that, with a few exceptions, have either been slaughtered by various hostiles from the pirates, to Ravenbeak's tribe, to any number of hostile forces in the galaxy, or they somehow ascended to a higher plane of existence, leaving their mortal monuments behind. Anyway, looks like we've finally run into our first missile door. Now to just regain the ability to use missiles, among other basic tricks. So, we've got one tree that's decomposing on a cellular level, and a plant that's unnaturally dry. Does that have something to do with what the pirates have been doing on this planet, or is there some other explanation? Guess we're going to be running into war wasps soon. As a side note, is it just me or is war wasp kind of a tongue twister? Yeah, I know I keep having to do multiple takes in order to actually say their name close to properly. Sometimes I just go war or something like that. I'm not even sure why. Okay, similar to the little swarmers we saw back on the station. Well, I can respect that kind of devotion to their crew, but unfortunately Samus can easily rip through entire swarms with ease. Oh right, we don't have the morph ball at the moment. That was taken from us for bullshit reasons in the same clip here. I guess we're looking for an alternate path forward for the time being. That's certainly a familiar feeling. As is the feeling that we're pretty close to some upgrades, but don't have the tools to reach them just yet, so they just sit there and taunt us. Again, not even a minor inconvenience. Eyes embedded in the wall that shoot lasers. I should not be in any way surprised by this. The series has thrown quite a number of ridiculous creatures at us over the years, after all. Right. Of course they departed the world a long time ago. That's part of why the place is in ruins. So they purposely didn't use advanced tech, much if at all, around here. Thank you for giving me some more evidence that you're space elves, and we certainly didn't find it pristine by the time we arrived here. I would have thought whatever planet was their homeworld would be the most sacred to the Chozo. Yeah. Poison in the tree. Whatever tribe considered this planet sacred probably would be horrified at the state it's in right now. Ah! Seems we've finally started running into hostile wasps. Right. Of course they're capable of shearing steel. Creatures that aren't capable of ripping through metal wouldn't be that threatening to someone who's constantly wearing armor. And of course, every creature we run into that's hostile has no sense of self-preservation. If they did, then they'd sooner or later learn not to go near the 6-foot-tall metal monster with a cannon for a right arm. Well, I suppose that's interesting, but we don't have anything that can break through sandstone barriers right now. And again, we get a scan that just tells us where the item is instead of what it is. Right, here's a good stopping point for now.